It started with silence, an eerie, vibrating stillness that felt like the breath before a scream. Then the static hit. A sharp burst flooded every screen and speaker, disrupting satellites, televisions, phones, radios. The noise wasn't just heard, it vibrated in the chest, like a thunderclap. Then a voice, hollow, metallic, ancient. They're already here. Everything froze. The signal spiked, shifting into a spiral of alien noise, scrambled at first, then unsettlingly rhythmic. It wasn't language. It was coded intent. Lights across the city flickered in a strange, pulsing sequence. People screamed, ran, or stood paralyzed. The protagonist, Eli Mercer, mid-30s, haunted, watched from his apartment as symbols unfurled across his screen. Behind the distortion, another voice whispered, "We've been waiting for you." Eli didn't just hear it. He felt it in his blood. In that moment, the world broke. Not with fire, but with revelation. And there would be no going back. The transmission never stopped. Even after the signal faded from screens, it continued in the air, buried in frequencies no human had ever accessed. Until now. Eli sat on his floor, hands trembling, staring at the TV's dead screen. But he still heard it, low, beneath reality's static hum. "We've been waiting for you." The words echoed again, not in his ears, but inside his chest. He grabbed his late father's leather-bound notebook, buried in a drawer for years. The pages were covered in symbols, glyphs identical to those from the transmission. Notes, dates, sketches. One line was underlined 3 times. The signal will return to its source. Panic became dread. Dread became recognition. "It's in me," Eli muttered. Outside, the hum intensified. The air was charged. Something had opened, and it was waiting for him to follow. He flipped through the notebook with increasing urgency. The sketches, interlocking rings, geometric constellations, strange figures, weren't just symbols. They were maps. His father had been tracking this, expecting this. But how? One drawing, dated 15 years ago, was a perfect replica of the pulse signature now saturating the sky. He knew, Eli whispered. And if his father knew, that meant someone else did too. Governments. Agencies. All lying. But worse, Eli's own blood responded to the signal. He wasn't just a witness. He was a node. A key. Something inherited had activated. He stared out the window. Street lights blinked 3 times in rhythmic succession. Anilhul de Sol. He recognized the pattern now. It wasn't random. It was a beacon. The city was unraveling. Screens went dark, then relit, only to show strange geometries. Buildings began to pulse, subtle at first, then rhythmic. Outside, Eli traced the signal. It was no longer digital. It had bled into matter. Graffiti melted into glyphs. Storefronts shimmered with invisible lines under the right light. The world was changing its code, converting itself into something else. He reached a back alley where walls pulsed with a soft inner glow. A glyph, large and breathing, had been carved into concrete, as if it had grown there. He touched it. No heat, no texture, just a vibration that sang through his bones. He reeled backward. The whisper came again. "Find us." This wasn't contact. This was possession. And it had already begun. On the rooftop, everything made sense, and nothing did. Eli looked out over the flickering skyline. One tower blinked in a coded rhythm. He counted. 3 blinks. Pause. 3, again. It matched the pattern in the notebook. He opened the final page. A single phrase had been circled. "When the tower answers, you'll know your place." Lightning cracked in a clear sky. The pulse was reaching its apex. Then the voice returned, clear and unmistakable, using his father's tone. "It's time." The tower flared, casting light across the city. All other lights dimmed. The pattern had locked. He wasn't watching a signal. He was the signal. Eli dropped the notebook. His breath hitched. The invasion hadn't just arrived. It had activated what was already here. The next morning, the world pretended to return to normal. But Eli knew better. The city buzzed with false calm. News anchors read pre-written scripts denying the previous night's events. Power had returned, but something in the current had changed. Eli walked the streets, silent, scanning every screen. Behind the pretense of normalcy, the glyphs returned, flashed for frames, embedded in commercials, scrolling within stock tickers. He wasn't imagining them. He wasn't alone in seeing them either. A stranger across the subway locked eyes with him, then looked away quickly. He knew the pattern. Eli felt it. Something had activated in others too. They were waking up, slowly, painfully. The city was infected with awareness. In the mirror of a shop window, Eli caught a final glyph flicker behind his own reflection. A whisper returned. "You are the key." The transmission had never stopped. It had gone underground. Eli returned home and tore through his father's notebook again. This time he read with intent, not panic. The diagrams weren't random. They were layered. Temporal, that wall. Instructions, coordinates, and questions, hundreds of them. One page stood out, a family tree. His father had traced back generations, all marked with the same phrase in red ink, transmitter line. Eli stared at the name above his own, D. Mercer. He remembered a conversation from years ago, his father warning him about signals in the blood. He'd thought it was madness. But now, the glyphs responded to him. He held his hand over a symbol and watched it flicker subtly on the page. The ink was reactive, or alive. "I'm not just decoding this," he muttered. "I am this." The transmission wasn't an invasion. It was a signal searching for its source, and it had found him. The world kept spinning, but beneath its skin, something festered. As Eli dug deeper, he uncovered a trail of missing persons, each connected to strange electromagnetic events. His father was only one of many. He followed news clippings, digital archives, and amateur conspiracy forums. The deeper he went, the more the pieces aligned. These weren't disappearances. They were activations. The people had been chosen, called away. Eli stared at the wall he'd pinned full of red string, maps, and symbols. All roads led to one source. An underground facility, sealed by the military 2 decades ago. He traced his fingers along a map. This place isn't forgotten, it's waiting. That night, as he closed the notebook, the lights flickered 3 times. The same pattern, dial. Someone else had found him. And they weren't human. At 3:03 a.m., Eli's phone rang, a number with no origin. A voice, synthetic yet human, said one word, "Run." Then silence. Seconds later, a power surge blasted through the building. Lights shattered. Screens melted into static. Eli bolted from his apartment just before the hallway exploded in a flash of white heat. Outside, black vehicles screeched to a halt. Men in plain dark uniforms emerged, no insignia. They swept the building. This wasn't police. This was containment. Eli ran through side streets, heart pounding, clutching the notebook. He didn't know who these people were. But they knew who he was. And they were here to erase him. As he ducked into a darkened alley, his watch beeped, 3 short pulses. The pattern again. But this time, it was guiding him. He escaped the perimeter, breathless and wild-eyed. The city blurred past him as he slipped into the underlevels. Abandoned subway lines, service tunnels, relics of a forgotten infrastructure. Here, the signal grew stronger. Every surface buzzed with residual energy. He stopped at a service door scrawled with a glyph, glowing faintly in infrared. It pulsed with recognition. "They left me a path," he whispered. He reached into the notebook and found a page labeled Threshold Points. The coordinates matched. This wasn't a blind journey. It was a design. He wasn't running anymore. He was being led. A new message surfaced in his mind, one he didn't hear but remembered: you were never meant to stay hidden. As the door creaked open, Eli stepped into the forgotten dark. The hunt had begun. But for the first time he wasn't prey. He was the signal answered. The tunnels twisted into depths unknown. Eli moved silently, guided by intuition, and something more. The signal pulsed in his bones now, guiding him like sonar. At the tunnel's end, an old metal door bore the same alien glyph he'd seen in his father's notebook. As he approached, it opened before he touched it. Inside, an ancient surveillance room, half destroyed, long abandoned. Yet monitors flickered with life. One screen showed him, from above. Another showed images of other cities, Paris, Tokyo, Lagos, all blinking with the same glyph patterns. The invasion was global, but it wasn't warfare. It was a simulation. Files were scattered across a rusted table. Project name: Sentient Bridge. His father's name appeared as the lead researcher. Eli whispered, "He helped build this." Everything he thought he knew about his father, his life, his purpose, fractured. Eli rifled through the scattered files. Pages yellowed with time revealed diagrams of neural interfaces, resonance chambers, and most disturbing of all, genetic scans. His own DNA was logged in these pages, labeled Generation 3, viable. He dropped the folder. His father hadn't just studied the signal, he had engineered a way for it to be received. Not by machines. By people. "We're not the audience," Eli muttered, shaking. "We're the antenna." He stumbled back as a nearby screen flashed. A transmission replayed his father's voice. "If you're seeing this, Eli, it means you've been activated." The image distorted. "I tried to stop them." His face, twisted with guilt, faded into static. Eli couldn't breathe. He wasn't just involved. He was the purpose. Eli exited the bunker and emerged in the city outskirts. Somewhere remote, somewhere forgotten. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows across empty fields. He could feel eyes on him. Watching. Following. A figure appeared on the horizon, walking straight toward him. It was a woman, calm, deliberate, with unnervingly still eyes. She stopped 5 feet away and said, "You've seen it, haven't you?" Eli didn't speak. She continued, "They've activated you, like they did me." Her skin flickered, just once, as if reality had blinked. Eli stepped back. She added, "We were born to carry it. You can't run from that." He whispered, "Who are you?" She replied, "The same as you, the next phase." Then she was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Just gone. And the signal within him roared louder. The encounter shattered any illusions Eli had left. This was no longer a mystery, it was a system. One built across generations, across continents. He returned to the city, this time not to hide, but to confront. He headed toward the old government archives, where sealed case files might hold answers. Inside the brutalist concrete structure, the elevator hummed with ancient static. Files were digital now, but he bypassed them. He knew what he was looking for. A locked cabinet, marked EA's Protocol, Mercer. He forced it open. Inside, old tapes, handwritten reports, and a personal letter addressed to him. The envelope trembled in his hands. Wall. Inside, a single line. "You are the echo we created." No signature. But he recognized the handwriting. His father had written it before he vanished. That night, Eli returned to the rooftop where it all began. The city looked different now, hollow, veiled in artificial calm. He looked up at the sky where stars flickered like coded messages. The signal wasn't random. It was part of the architecture of reality, hiding in plain sight. In his mind, the pieces locked together. His role wasn't to fight it. It was to finish what had been started. But who started it? His father? The aliens? The government? The answer didn't matter anymore. The choice was his. The air shimmered. Above him, the skyscraper pulsed again. Except this time, he didn't flinch. "I'm done running," he said aloud. From somewhere deep in the sky, a beam of light pulsed downward. And Eli didn't step back. He stepped into it. Eli stood inside the beam, and it didn't burn. It welcomed him. The light wasn't energy, it was memory, encoded in waves. In an instant, his mind opened to visions not his own. Stars bleeding into black holes, worlds crumbling, civilizations consumed from within by the same signal. He saw Earth as part of a much older plan. The voice returned, no longer foreign. It was layered, speaking in many voices, human, alien, synthetic. "You are the last bridge," it said. "Not between species, between truths." The light faded. Eli collapsed. When he opened his eyes, the rooftop was empty, no beam, no pulse. But now, he knew. The signal didn't come to invade. It came to unlock. And what it unlocked wasn't power. It was history, a buried truth. Earth had never been alone. It had been built to forget. Until now. The next morning, Eli tracked the remaining coordinates from the notebook. One led to an isolated desert facility, government-owned, long decommissioned. The perimeter was guarded by drones. He hacked the signal, using a frequency he'd felt, not learned. The machines stood down. Inside, he descended into a hidden structure deeper than he thought possible. Underground chambers buzzed with abandoned tech, some human, some unmistakably not. In the lowest level he found the truth, a living databank, pulsing with energy. Inside it, files cataloging alien encounters, cover-ups, and something labeled the Coalescence Protocol. It was a plan. Not for survival, but for merging. "They weren't warning us," Eli said, breath-catching. "They were preparing us." A faint glyph glowed on the wall. This was not an invasion. This was a handover. Eli accessed a terminal fused with alien design. No keyboard, just contact. As he placed his hand on it, it read him, scanned him, then welcomed him. A holographic display filled the air. Images of Earth overlaid with alien schematics. The Coalescence Protocol had already begun. Since the early 1960s, certain global events weren't accidents. They were calibrations. Eli watched in horror as scenes of war, disasters, and economic crashes unfolded with mathematical precision. "They nudged us," he said aloud. "Shaped us." And among the projected documents he found something worse. A photograph of his mother, smiling, in a lab coat, beside one of the alien architects. "No," he whispered. The betrayal was complete. His entire life had been engineered for this moment. He staggered back from the terminal, heart pounding. The truth was unbearable. His family hadn't just known about the signal, they'd shaped its path. His father wasn't a victim. His mother wasn't absent. They were architects, guardians of a secret humanity wasn't ready to know. But now the veil had lifted, and Eli couldn't unsee it. "My whole life was built around a lie." Anger surged. He wasn't a bridge, he was a fuse, designed to ignite the next phase. As he turned to leave, something stopped him. A second presence in the room. A man, tall, expressionless, waiting by the chamber's exit. "You've finally seen it," the man said. "Now you must choose. Join us or destroy everything." Eli didn't respond, because for the first time, he didn't know what the right answer was. Eli walked past the stranger without speaking. Not an act of defiance, but clarity. The answer wouldn't come in that chamber. It would come from the world above, the world being lied to. He surfaced at dusk. The city lights blinked in coded intervals. No. He understood them now, language hiding in electricity. The glyphs weren't messages. They were instructions. He found an old radio tower, climbed to the top. There, with the notebook and stolen tech, he built a crude transmitter. The system was ancient, analog, but the signal didn't care. It flowed through him. He broadcasted the truth, not in words but in light. Images, pulses, knowledge. A warning. A choice. Across the city, receivers activated. Phones vibrated. Screens flickered. The truth was out. The world would never be the same. But it would finally be aware. Across the globe something stirred. The transmission Eli released began to spread, not through cables, but through consciousness. People reported shared dreams, sudden memories, symbols appearing in thoughts uninvited. Governments scrambled to contain the spread. Some tried to shut down power grids. Others issued blackout orders. But it was too late. The truth had taken root. Eli watched the reports unfold in real time from a stolen satellite relay. Then, his breath caught. On screen was a figure, his father, alive. Not in person, but in projection, addressing a room full of global leaders. The activation was always going to happen, his father said. You were warned. Eli clenched his fists. His father wasn't just part of this, he was still leading it. The broadcast ended with one line etched across the screen: coalescence imminent. And then, silence. Eli left the relay station with a singular mission: find his father. Not to reunite, but to confront. He followed encrypted signal trails, bouncing through abandoned bunkers, ghost satellites, and data relays. Each waypoint showed signs of others who had come before him, those who failed, or perhaps joined. Finally, coordinates led him to a deep-sea research platform long believed to have sunk. But it was still there, hidden beneath cloaking arrays. As he approached by stolen sub, he felt it again. That vibration in his chest. The signal wasn't just guiding him anymore. It was pulling him. The ocean opened into darkness as the platform emerged, glowing with internal light. It wasn't human anymore. And neither, he feared, was his father. Inside the submerged facility, silence reigned. No guards. No personnel. Only the hum of living architecture. Hallways pulsed like veins. Lights blinked in rhythmic glyphs. Oh. As Eli moved deeper, the signal within him resonated louder, synchronizing with the hum. At the core chamber he found what he feared. His father, hooked into an alien construct, partially fused, partially aware. Wires entered his spine. His eyes glowed faintly. You came? The father said, his voice distorted, but unmistakably his. They chose us to bridge the species divide. We're the answer to extinction. Eli stepped closer. You sacrificed humanity. His father smiled faintly. No. I saved it from itself. The chamber pulsed. Eli's next choice would determine whether that salvation continued or ended. I won't let this happen, Eli said. But even as the words left his mouth, the signal surged through the chamber. A failsafe, triggered by emotion. The coalescence protocol began to accelerate. All across the world, people stopped mid-step. Glyphs appeared in the sky. The air shimmered. Humanity was being rewritten. Eli's father closed his eyes. You can't stop it. Only redirect it. On the control panel, two glyphs blinked. One red. One white. One meant integration. The other, purge. Eli had seconds. His hands hovered. This isn't a war, he whispered. It's a test. With a final breath, he slammed his hand down. Not on either glyph, but between them. The system froze. Then shattered. The chamber imploded. He had done something neither side expected. Chosen a third option. The platform exploded behind him as Eli swam upward, lungs burning, the signal silenced. For now. Mid-you. On the surface, dawn broke, strangely quiet. All across the globe, lights flickered once, then stabilized. People woke from a fog they didn't know they'd entered. Screens went black. The glyphs faded. In cities and towns, there were no fireworks, no invasions, no collapse, just an overwhelming sense that something immense had passed. Eli emerged from the water, gasping. The protocol was broken. The war had been prevented by refusal, not resistance. And yet, he could still feel it deep inside. A piece of the signal remained. Not a threat. Not a weapon. A question. Unanswered. As he looked to the horizon, he knew this wasn't the end. It was the pause before something greater. Weeks passed, but the world did not forget. Not fully. People reported strange dreams, memories that weren't theirs, visions of places that didn't exist. Governments publicly denied the signal, quietly scrambled to study what remained of it. But the truth had been released, and the illusion of control was gone. Eli stayed hidden, moving between abandoned safe houses once used by those in the original project. In one of them, he found a wall of data still being collected, residual pulses, frequency echoes. The signal had adapted. It had become organic. He realized with dawning dread, even in destruction, it had learned. He thought he'd chosen a third path, something that ended it. But maybe he'd simply taught it how to evolve. He whispered to the empty room, "What did I unleash?" One night, Eli encountered another activated. A young girl no older than 10, eyes glowing faintly with glyph-like patterns. She wasn't afraid of him. She recognized him. "You stopped the voice," she said softly. "But it still whispers." She touched his hand, and he saw through her eyes a whole network of others, scattered across the world, connected now in silence. Not controlled. Not commanded. Linked. Wind. The signal hadn't been erased. It had been rerouted. Eli understood. The human mind had become its new infrastructure. "It's using us," he said. But the girl shook her head. "No, it's becoming us." The line between signal and soul had blurred. Integration hadn't ended. It had just shifted form and spread faster than ever. Driven by urgency, Eli traveled to one of the last remaining legacy installations, an Arctic observatory once used to triangulate interstellar transmissions. Beneath the ice, its systems still pulsed. He powered it up, and immediately the array lit with stored data, still active, still communicating. But not with space. With Earth. Coordinates mapped signal patterns to population centers. ITWs today. Cities. Schools. Prisons. The signal was studying them all. Adapting. Learning culture. He accessed deeper files, logs marked Phase 2. It was never about domination. It was assimilation through mimicry. Humanity was being reflected back to itself, distorted. If left unchecked, the signal wouldn't conquer humanity. It would replace it, piece by piece, from the inside out. Eli stared into the frozen horizon outside the observatory, heart pounding. He had stopped the protocol, but not the outcome. What had been technological was now biological, philosophical. The signal had seated itself inside ideas, not just minds. People were starting to act differently, unified, calm, cooperative in eerie patterns. Civilization didn't collapse. It smoothed. Friction was vanishing. At first glance it looked like peace. But peace with no struggle, no difference, no identity, wasn't peace. It was stasis. Eli realized the threat wasn't war or destruction, it was perfection. A version of Earth where nothing ever changed again. "We're being overwritten," he whispered. "Not by machines. Not by aliens. But by an idea of us that wasn't really human." Back in the observatory, Eli stood before the core transmitter, an ancient uplink tower built to communicate with deep space. He had one chance to fight back, not by destroying, but by broadcasting a countersignal. A human one. Flawed. Raw. .1. Beautiful. Beautiful. He uploaded moments, laughter, conflict, grief, music, failure, pieces of the human experience that couldn't be encoded into perfection. He set the system to loop endlessly. The transmitter roared to life, hurling noise and memory into the frequencies. The Earth's own story, uncontrolled and wild, was now part of the signal. You wanted to know us? Eli whispered, stepping back. Then know this. Somewhere in the silence, the glyphs flickered. The signal hesitated, and for the first time, it listened. The counter-signal spread like wildfire. It couldn't erase the alien influence, but it disrupted it, fragmented it. Suddenly, people began dreaming new dreams. Messy, chaotic, emotional. Not unified. Not perfect. Human. Line. In cities across the world, the eerie calm broke. People argued, questioned, laughed, spontaneous expressions of imperfection. Eli watched this unfold through scattered data feeds. His transmission wasn't a weapon. It was a reminder. And for now, it was working. But he knew better than to believe in endings. The original signal hadn't been destroyed. It had only paused, adapted, still watching, still waiting, still learning. It had touched every mind on Earth. Some had let it in completely. Some still might. Eli turned off the monitor and stood in silence. The world had heard his voice. But was it ready to answer? The aftermath was quieter than anyone expected. No parades. No broadcasts. No declarations of victory. The world moved forward in slow uncertainty. A new form of awareness lingered in the air. Some still felt the glyphs in their dreams. Others saw nothing at all. But something had changed. Humanity had touched the edge of something vast, and survived. For now. Eli walked the crowded streets of a city, returning to motion. No one recognized him. No one needed to. He wasn't a hero. He was a reminder. His reflection passed in storefront windows. Older now, changed. The signal might return in a new form, through a new vessel. But Earth had learned to ask questions. And sometimes questions were more powerful than resistance. Deep beneath the surface of the planet, long-forgotten chambers stirred. The signal hadn't only moved through the airwaves, it had embedded itself in places, objects, machines left untouched for decades. A vault clicked open in a bunker no one remembered building. Inside, rows of dormant figures, eyes closed, skin indistinctly human. Lights above them flickered, then blinked in the glyph pattern. One pair of eyes opened. Not hostile. Not curious. Just aware. Across the world, similar vaults activated. The coalescence hadn't failed. It had simply pivoted. Not through conquest. Through inheritance. What Eli delayed was not an end. It was a transformation already in motion. The future wasn't coming. It had already arrived, quietly, patiently, and irrevocably. Far above Earth, something watched. A vessel, not alien in appearance, but ancient, monolithic, floated in the void. Inside, machines no longer moved. They waited, watched, recorded. One console glowed faintly as Eli's transmission arrived. Data pulsed. Symbols changed. The observer had no eyes, no body, only function. Its sole directive, to monitor worlds that reached sentient threshold. Earth had passed. Not by solving its signal, but by choosing not to obey it. The observer marked the transmission with a new classification, variable. A planet with will. Unstable, unpredictable, alive. The console dimmed. A new sequence began. Not for Earth, but for the next world. Eli's choice had saved humanity, but alerted the galaxy. And now, Earth was no longer invisible. Eli walked alone at the edge of the forest, far from any city. No signals. No noise. Just wind and birdsong. He needed this silence, not as escape, but as clarity. He had learned the hardest truth. The battle was never about machines or aliens. It was about choice. About what it meant to be human. Imperfect. Unpredictable. Alive. Dull. He sat beneath an old tree, staring at the sky as clouds drifted past. In his hand, the last page of the notebook, blank except for one new symbol that had appeared days ago. A glyph. One he'd never seen before. Beneath it, a final message had formed in ink. This is only the beginning. He smiled softly, folded the page, and placed it in his pocket. Whatever came next, he would face it. Not as a bridge, but as a man.